Alright, one more video for you guys today, and that is kind of along the same lines of subject to and lease options. Let's talk when to use one versus the other. And I'm a big proponent of subject to. I like to get full ownership. I like to get full control of the property as long as it makes sense. Problem is, sometimes you'll get the right house in the right area with the right amenities, everything about the deal you like except the payment, and or possibly even the equity situation isn't big enough for what your minimum criteria is. But let's go through payment situations. If you don't have a situation where a tenant can afford the property, and it might be a good payment for that house. It might be an A paper loan on there, but if a tenant can't afford that house, meaning if a rent payment will not support the PITI payment on the house, then you are either going to take on negative cash flow, or you're going to have to pass that on to the owner of the property, and instead of buying it sub 2, you take a lease option on the property. And now, and just as a rough example, let's say we've got a $200,000 house, and let's say this $200,000 house will rent for $1,200, but you've got a $1,375 payment. Now, you might be able to get $1,295. You might even be able to get $1,395 if you offer terms on the house. But with a $1,375, you really, at best case scenario, you've got $25 a month cash flow, and that doesn't cover any vacancy, minor maintenance, repairs, and frankly, that's a little too thin. But if somebody was to rent that property, they're going to get, they rent it for $1,200. They're going to get a net rent after a property manager of about 90% of that, so about $1,080. If you can get a lease option at $1,080 per month, and then you can go out and get $1,295, maybe $1,395 a month, now you've created a cash flow spread on that same property. Okay, so there's basically a decent example of when to use a lease option over subject to. Let's take the same house, and let's say you've got it's the same $200,000 house, but you've actually got, say, an $1,100 payment on this house. Now that's a good situation where a $1,200 market rent, okay, and a $1,295 to $1,395 lease to own payment or rent to own payment on that property, that makes for a good subject to deal, because you can basically, the tenant can afford that property, and you're going to have more money at the end of the month than month at the end of your money. So that makes sense. The more of those you do, the more deals you can do. Whereas if you take on negative cash flow, you're slowly putting yourself out of business, because there's only so much of that you're going to tolerate. And frankly, it's a bad habit to get into when you start. So don't get in the habit at all. Just don't do deals that take negative cash flow. So another situation where I've used lease option over sub 2 is, let's take that $200,000 house, and let's say they just don't have enough equity for you to feel comfortable. You could always flip that deal to somebody else, but if you want to stay in the deal, if you want to make continuous deals, there's two things you can do. You can take a lease option, and you can offset when you start making the payments, so that might help compensate you for less equity. So maybe you don't start making payments on that for 3, 4, 5 months out, and in the meantime, if you rent it out before that, you can take all that extra rent when you don't have an underlying payment, and that goes into the profit of your deal, and also helps you build a little bit of reserve in case you do get a property back if it comes back vacant. So that's one angle. Another angle is just take a performance lease option, in which you're only paying the owner if you're collecting from a subtenant. So that's another situation where you can use the lease option over the sub 2. But in my opinion, adjust your marketing. Get leads from people that are going to have a payment that is going to make sense from a lease to own. Okay, typically most of the people, that's just adjustment in your marketing. It's the market, which is the list, who are you marketing to, the message, and the media, how are you delivering it to them. And I mean, when I'm talking about who you're marketing to get the right person calling, that's the list, okay? That's the market part of this. So you need to adjust your marketing, adjust your list a little bit, so you get people whose payments are going to make sense based on what the house is going to lease for. And so again, let your marketing help you get the right people calling you so you can ideally do the subject to transaction or an owner financing transaction. And if that doesn't work, you've always got the lease option as a fallback. So hope that helps you clarify when subject to works, when lease options work, and when to use one versus the other. All right. If you haven't heard this already, check out my website if you want more free, high-content real estate investing advice. Check out localmentor.com. I got $719 worth of free stuff waiting for you right now. You can download it immediately. You don't need to put a credit card up there, nothing. Just plug in your email address, and I'll deliver to you a 7-day email course. I'll give you $719 worth of audio training and a whole lot more. This is Michael J. Have a great day.